Good morning, Year 10. I hope you're well and having a lovely day. Please could you write the date and the title? The date is the 5th of January and the title is Exam Skills, English Language, Paper 1. Then I'd like you to write down everything you know about the Paper 1 exam. How many questions are there? What do you have to do to answer them? What types of text are included? And what type of writing do you have to do? Pause the video for 5 minutes or so to answer these questions now. So now we're going to be going through those answers. So in terms of how many questions there are 4 questions in the reading section and 1 question in the writing section. For question 1, you have to retrieve explicit information. For question 2, you compare texts. Question 3, you analyse language and structure. And question 4, you evaluate texts. Paper 1 is about non-fiction. Remember, paper 2 is the fiction paper. You'll have to do functional writing. That would include writing such as letters, speeches, and reports. So please do check over your answers and make any corrections or notes. Exam tips. Section A, 40 marks. This is the reading section. You should always read both texts carefully. This will help you to understand what the texts are about. You should spend 10 minutes doing this. Once you have read the texts, then look at the questions. Read the questions carefully, underline any key words, and mark off any line references in the appropriate texts. For question 1, keep the line specified. Use short quotes only if asked, and stick to a maximum of 5 to 6 words if the questions ask you for phrases. If asked to explain, use your own words. You should spend about 5 minutes on question 1. The second question is worth 6 marks. You need to make 3 points of comparison and spend about 15 minutes. Question 3 requires you to analyse the text. Mark off the lines you have to focus on and aim to pick out 2 language and 2 structure points, explaining the effects. You should spend 20 minutes on this question. Question 4 requires you to evaluate a statement in relation to 2 texts. You must show both agreement and disagreement with the statement, as well as comparing how the 2 texts measure up. You should aim to make 4 points, 3 agreeing and 1 disagreeing, and spend 25 minutes. Section B is also worth 40 marks. This is the writing section, and if you plan carefully, you'll probably only need 45 minutes to plan and complete this section. Please pause the video to make notes. Spend about 3 to 5 minutes doing this now. Task 1. Read both texts carefully. So remember, the exam paper is on class charts. Then I would like you to answer question 1. Look again at text 1, lines 6 to 10. Give 2 words which show that what the factory girls do not like about their jobs. So remember, you're just doing 2 words, no explanation. For part B, explain 1 reason why no one knows that the factory girls are unhappy. So this is asking you to use your own words, but you only need to make 1 point. So you're not quoting here, you're explaining. And then for part 1C, why is the word enjoyment in quotation marks? So this is asking you to show your understanding of a structural choice. What I'd like to do is spend 10 minutes reading the 2 texts, and then 5 to 8 minutes to answer these questions. Pause the video now in order to do this. Okay, so for question 1A, give 2 words which show the factory girls do not like their jobs. Hopefully you marked off lines 6 to 10, so you know the correct section that you should be looking at. And you get 1 mark for each of the following words: underpaid and overworked. Now on to part 1B. Explain 1 reason why no one knows the factory girls are unhappy. This question will accept either an explanation in their own words or a relevant quotation. So you would get 1 mark for any one of the following reasons. We do not complain, we are silent. Apparently content. You must include the word apparently. Only vague mention is ever made in the newspapers of the factory girl. And then on to 1C. Why is the word enjoyment in quotation marks? 1 mark will be awarded for any response which conveys the idea that she doesn't really mean it. She doesn't really enjoy her job. She's being ironic or sarcastic. She means the opposite of what she is writing. So any of those answers would get you the mark. So please spend 3 to 5 minutes checking work. You may want to add anything that you didn't get down as well. So pause the video in order to do that now. So we're now going on to question 2. This is worth 6 marks. In both texts, the writers describe their jobs. What are the similarities between their experiences of work? Draw on evidence from both texts to support your answer. So you need to highlight what you're looking for, in this case, similarities and experiences of work. You need to make 3 points using comparative connectives. You must quote from each text to support every point. So 6 quotes are required in total. You should use short quotes. For full marks, explain briefly why each quote supports your point. Both writers feel the need to work. For instance, text 1 has to keep body and soul together, and text 2 has to fund a mobile phone habit. Pause the video for 10 minutes or so in order to do this now. So here are some possible answers. Both writers work long hours. In text 1, from Monday morning to Saturday night, without remission. In text 2, from working until midnight on Friday to starting at 7 a.m. on Saturday, 5 times a week. Both writers work extra hours. In text 1, the writer felt compelled by stern necessity. In text 2, the writer needed to fund my mobile phone habit. Both writers find aspects of their job unenjoyable. In text 1, the writer describes her work as drudgery of the most wearisome kind. In text 2, the writer describes constantly serving up the same as tedious. Both writers look for help from the government. Text 1 refers to the report by the government about our problems. Text 2 is pleased the government has brought in the living wage. In both texts, the work is physically tiring, wearisome, and does a number on my sleeping patterns. Check you have made the following. Made 3 points, ideally in 3 separate paragraphs. Used comparative connectives, such as both, similarly, and supported each point with quotes from the texts. 6 in total. Spend 5 minutes checking your answers. Finally, make notes on question 3. As I've mentioned, question 3 is worth 12 marks. You need to look at the whole of text 2. How does the writer use language and structure to convey the advantages and disadvantages of his job? Support your ideas by referring to the text, using relevant subject terminology. Spend the remaining 10 to 15 minutes of this lesson picking out language and structure points you could make. If you have time, write up the response. Pause the video now in order to do this. Okay, and that brings us to the end of today's lesson. Thank you very much for your hard work, and we'll continue on with this in our next language lesson. So thank you very much, have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll speak to you next time.